Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's RD2RD Live Show. And we have a really fun one for you today. For those of you joining us, wanting to learn more about the cash pay to insurance reimbursement model. And what I'm really excited about for today's Q&A with Amber is we're really talking about it from a lived experience. Really not so often there's a lot of information out there on the nuts and bolts of getting credentialed and this, but really putting all of the pieces together into what the experience was like having a plan to be cash pay virtual, going through that decision-making process, the bumps, because it never goes, yeah, I'm just going to be in network with these insurance companies. And like, well, I'm not taking anybody new. So we're going to talk through kind of Amber's experience, and she's really taken her practice to a new level even recently, a lot of success. So we are going to dive right into our content. But first, I want to let Amber give a little bit of background, talk about your career journey. And if you have specific questions for Amber, I'll be keeping an eye on questions, so feel free to drop them in. But Amber, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about you, your career journey.
Sure. So I'm Amber Gourley. I am a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian now for 7 years. Hard to believe it's been that long. I am a second career dietitian. My first degree in my first life was in the business world, actually, and ended up deciding to come back and go back to school, which was, a good 5 years just to get all of that knocked out. And then, I've not regretted becoming a dietitian 1 minute since, but I think just that little piece of my background and who I am really made me realize it's never too late to change your mind about something and pivot. And that has probably been one of the biggest life and business lessons I've learned. My whole career has been an outpatient. I've worked for community centers. I've worked for the VA. And then, of course, I have my own practice as well. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but that's just a little bit about me and my background as a dietitian.
Yeah. So focusing in a little bit more about your niche, and talk to us a little bit about your practice, Heal You Wellness, because there's a lot, I think there's a lot to learn there. Just tell us a little bit, and then maybe how that process happened for you of getting into that niche.
Sure. So I actually started out with the idea that I was going to have 100% virtual practice. I started the Dietitian of Virtual Practice Facebook group, which some of you may have been in or may have known me from. And that was really the plan. I was going to sell cash packages and be 100% virtual so we could kind of live wherever we wanted to live and have that freedom. And I did that for well over a year or so while I was still working full time. And then when I left, I continued down that path. And what I realized for me personally were a couple of things. I miss the in-person interaction. Telehealth is fantastic. I'm honored and delighted to have really helped a lot of dietitians kind of learn that path through their Facebook group. But for me, it just wasn't what I needed. And I kind of started recognizing that. And then the other thing I recognized was I don't want to see people 40 hours a week. It's just, I can't do it. It drains me so much. But I still have a passion for helping people and really, providing that one-on-one individualized care. So for me, the next step that made sense was actually creating a team, building a team, which, funny enough, and you'll hear this a lot through my story, my husband had mentioned about 2 years before. Amber, I think, you need to think about building a team. I think you need to think about hiring someone. It's like, no, I can't let go of that control. No. Turns out I can, and I did. And it was a great decision. So, now I have a dietitian. I had 2 dietitians, one left, which was, a great experience for her, our opportunity. And then we're onboarding another dietitian. But what it allows me to do is to see clients 2 days a week and still generate, a nice, healthy income.
So I want to stop you and talk about that timing, because I think there's this idea of there's certain things you have to do before you hire somebody, and I hear, and I just want to talk about that now. I know we'll dive into a little bit more, but your thoughts on that of hiring someone. When did you decide? Do you think you need to be at a certain point before you bring somebody on? What were some of the key things there for you?
Oh, that's a good question, and it's going to make a lot of people kind of twitchy when I tell them how I chose to hire someone, because I didn't have a single client for my dietitian when I hired her.
Yeah. Okay. I'm twitching.
But it was very much right time, right place, right person. So part of my background was eating disorders, and I really got burnt out. It's a very exhausting area to work in permanently and full time, but it's a very needed and it's a really important field. And where I live, there's not a lot of resources. We have, one other dietitian in the area that sees eating disorders. And at that time, she, I think she maybe had been taking like 5 clients a month or something really small. And so I knew from my past experience working in the community that if I brought someone on board with that skill set, I would be able to fill their schedule because I'd done it before for myself. And so we had a dietitian move here. She has, years and years and years of experience in the eating disorder arena. She's a single mom. She wanted a flexible schedule. She didn't need full-time work. And so, for her, I just said, hey,
right person, right place, right time.
Right person, right place, right time. And we were still cash-based at that point as well. And she took the jump with me.
So here I am in my head, I'm thinking, but Amber, you have a business background. So, you'd have a leg up on just, science dietitian me on making these kinds of decisions. How much of the decision that you made around hiring and just the business element, do you think you pulled from your business background versus you kind of learned along the way? I'm not sure if I'm putting that out there right. I hope you get the gist of my question.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. So, in my case, when I went to business school, and I hear things are changing, but there's a lot of theory. And when I stepped foot into my first job in the business world, I realized that the last 4 years were not going to translate well. Maybe if you're an accountant, it translates very well. I did not love accounting. My background was in human resources. So,
okay.
When I made that hiring decision, it was really more, okay, this is the vision I have. I know I want a team. I know that these are the needs of the community. So there was that strategic mindset of, okay, here's a need. I can fill this need. This will grow my business. Mm-hmm. But it was also very much really relying on my own intuition and my own gut saying, this is the right person. This is the right time. If you looked at it through 100% through that lens of building a business, it probably wouldn't have made sense at that time, but taking the two pieces of,
but I think you said an important point about you had done it, you built that up for yourself. Yeah. I think that's really important too. You say it's intuition, but you actually had done it before. And I think there's a lot of value in that statement as well. Because you're not going into a completely different area. You knew your market. If we talk about looking at, there isn't many other services. So you really were not giving yourself enough credit, Amber. I'm just going to say it. Not giving yourself enough credit. So that's really, I hope we'll come back to this point about hiring and bringing on. But getting back to this, you had this idea of being able to work from wherever you wanted, this idea of this cash pay virtual practice. And I think we kind of get attached to this idea of what it is, right? And then deciding that, okay, going to an insurance reimbursement model, that crashes everything, a lot of it, right? You're going to need the physical space. It's kind of like just break the glass ball. It's all gone. What were the factors that you looked at? How did that come to happen for you?
So at the point when I brought Meredith on board, I did have a physical office. I was subleasing because I did at that point know I wanted to be more in person. Although, I will say, and obviously COVID has changed the landscape, but even before COVID, you could have had a virtual practice and taken insurance. Mm-hmm. That was a possibility. It's even more so now. But really what it just came down to was, again, my husband saying, hey, if you want to grow this faster, then you need to take insurance. And he'd been saying that for probably 6 months before I was ready to hear it.
Wow.
Yeah. So, always there being like, Amber, I think you should look into this. And I was really, really resistant. And like you said, it was a big, big pivot for our business. We were growing, but the growth was slower than what I wanted.
I'm going to pause you for 2 seconds because I might need
Sure.
to tap. I don't multitask well. I know it's a lie. No one can really do it. So I'm going to go ahead and I was listening though. I was having some connectivity, but I'm seeing that it's connected. So let me tap over here. Just going to scope it out. Okay. Event logs, video status. Same one. What I'm going to do really quick is, because people said they could see it and then it might have dropped off. I hate to refresh. I'm nervous about doing that. So for those of you, it says it's not showing anymore. It's black. And I was listening. Can anyone? Oh, it's back. Thank you for that comment. Mind you, thank you. I'm sorry, I had to move to the 3rd floor. I was telling Amber I loaned my office to my husband a couple days. We were having carpet installed, and I think he's claimed it permanently. So I got booted to a different space. So my signal's not as strong here. So my apologies if we're having some connectivity issues. Okay. All right, Miss Amber. So going back to this topic of virtual kind of insurance billing, I'll let you, the factors in making that decision, because I think from your lived experience.
Yeah, so just kind of to recap the factors, it was really accelerated growth was a huge part of the decision. I wanted to grow faster than what we were with the cash-based practice. And then I did also decide to be much more community focused and community based. And the reality is that there are limiting factors based on where you live. I could talk to somebody in California and offer them a $2,000 or $3,000 cash package and they wouldn't blink an eye. But locally, that was prohibitive. Just we live in a lower cost area to live. It's wonderful for lots of reasons. But a high dollar cash pay practice from a dietitian is harder to achieve. So quite frankly, I wanted it to be a little bit easier. And I looked at the insurance, the credentialing and insurance group run by Marlene Hiller, and really watched that group for quite a long time and really weighed out the pros and the cons before making the decision. Mm-hmm. But I can say I overall have not regretted that decision.
Mm-hmm. So some of those, I guess, misconceptions, you had an idea. I mean, you started a Facebook group with thousands of people in it all around cash pay virtual practice. And what misconceptions did you have now that you're on the other side about the whole cash pay and then about the insurance reimbursement model that you think really need to be kind of, dispelled, or just share them?
So I think for me, again, it went back to control. I really did not want to give insurance control over my practice, who I could see, how I could run my business. And the reality is the coverage has been a lot better than I anticipated. And we're continuing to actually pivot the business to be a little bit more in line with what insurance covers. But overall, I'm pretty much seeing the same types of people and seeing a lot of coverage. So that's, a happy
now, was that something you figured out during the process, or did you know that going in when you made the decision to get credentialed, or was it kind of a leap of faith? I guess I'm curious, because I feel like as dietitians, we're also type A. We're like, well, this is exactly how I did it. I had this, and I had the spreadsheet, and I had it all 100% figured out. So I'm just wondering from your perspective.
Not type A at all. I'm type, what I call some B+. I had a rough idea of what insurance would cover. I did not know the breadth or the depth of what it would cover with the population that I see. So a lot of it was a leap of faith. But here's what we need to remember. Very few things in life are permanent, right? You sign the insurance contract, you've got your terms, you know how long it is, and you can always choose to exit that contract if it doesn't work out. And so that's, was very much the mentality I had. Let's try it for a year. Let's see how it goes and take it from there.
Did you, going in, decide to do your own billing? We always talk about what electronic health record should I use, and some of the back-end office things that
Right.
can really make it, I think people get really caught up in. What was your...
Yeah, I'm not type A. I tend to make pretty quick decisions. I started out using Healthy. I personally did not love the format of that platform. My clients had some issues with navigating it. When Practice Better came out, I did tend to fall in love with that program, and I've been with them ever since. Which, let me tell you, running a group practice with 3 different accounts is a totally different ballgame. I don't recommend it, but we did it. But we still use Practice Better now. They have their team platform, and overall we do like that. I did end up doing the credentialing myself. I spoke to a few people, and ultimately, I talked to a dietitian, and their advice was, look, you need to understand the back end. And so as much as I am a pay to get it done kind of person, I was like, okay, I really do need to understand the process. So I've done all of our own credentialing. I bring on a new dietitian, I'll do her credentialing.
But I think some of that looks at, as you're moving into a group practice, like what parts of the business do you take on and what things do you outsource? And I've actually heard that before from other people who are running a group practice. Part of the appeal, if you are getting, you're hiring a dietitian, they want to see clients, like, how to do that credentialing for them, and it's part of being a group practice owner. You could outsource that, but it might be something, because you're going to have turnover, perhaps you're going to have growth. So it's a skill that you're going to use over and over again. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to get better at it versus you do it once and then maybe you set it aside, like whether or not it's worthwhile if it's a one-time deal for you and you're not going to need to do it again.
Yeah. And the reality is it's not that difficult.
No.
I was really intimidated by the process. Blue Cross Blue Shield probably took me 15 minutes to complete the application. Cigna, Medicare's the biggest beast, but even that was not terrible.
See, I think that's the misconception in insurance. Yes, not everybody has a super smooth experience, but I think it's good. We're talking about, Amber's experience here, and I think sometimes the comments, always to acknowledge, if you're in a group or something, I always feel like the noisiest people are often the ones who've had the worst experience. If we think about it on travel websites or other places, to think about who isn't sharing their experience, who has the most incentive. So Amber is sharing that it wasn't so difficult from her perspective. But let me see. So closed panels. Now we're talking about getting credentialed. Like, it's great. You're like, I want to be in network with Blue Cross and United and all of, Cigna. And then you have this closed panel. What is that? And talk to us about your experience.
Yeah. So when we moved into the insurance space.
And where are you? You're in Tennessee, right?
I'm in Tennessee. Yeah. Okay. Northeast Tennessee. We're the point of the state. But yeah, the point. When we moved into the insurance-based model, a lot of doors did open up for us locally. And one of those doors was contracting with the local physician's office. And we've been in that office for, 6 or 7 months with Blue Cross Blue Shield.
When you say contracting with a physician's office, talk to me about what that means so people who might understand.
Sure. Yeah. So we have a contract to staff a dietitian for their business 1 day a week.
Okay.
With room for growth. So we obviously accept the insurances that we accept. They refer to us for those clients, and then United Healthcare is probably the 3rd most common insurance provider in our region. And unfortunately, they were closed. and honestly, I would have gone after them a lot earlier if I had realized how large they were here. I didn't realize that. And so I probably went back and forth with United Healthcare for well over 6 or 7 months. We would get referrals. We would try to get a gap agreement or
because closed, for those people, I'm sure they're listening, closed means they're not taking on new providers in your discipline. They don't need any more registered dietitians, they say.
They don't need more dietitians. We were applying for gap exceptions, which basically says, hey, I've got this referral. We offer this specialty. There's no one within, I think it's a 60-mile radius that offers that. And we actually had gotten a few of those approved, which probably worked to our favor.
Okay. That's
so
a good point.
You kind of, just kind of build your case, do what you can do. I probably spent countless hours on the phone with them. Just fair warning, they are not the easiest to work with. Blue Cross Blue Shield and Cigna are great overall. But so really what ended up happening was in January, after I had been denied a contract for the 4th time, I got really mad. I have one really big rule in life, and that's don't mess with my money. And they were messing with my money, right? They're messing with my ability to make a living. And so I researched the area. I researched how many physicians they had paneled. I ran all the numbers. I looked at the diabetes rates in this area. I quoted their own website to them where they talked about nutrition as the #1 treatment for diabetes, put all that together in a letter. And then I also got a letter from the physicians who are referring to us. Which I think, the two of those things combined are probably what forced their hand. I also cited state law, kind of showing them where I felt they were in violation of the state law itself.
Of having access to medical care?
Yeah, of having access to to qualified professionals without having to wait. And, you can look up your own state's laws around insurance and accessibility. And so within about a month, they emailed us and said, okay, we'll give you your contract.
Wow. So you've talked about these referral sources with, local physicians. And when I was on your website about your Heal You Wellness, you have nutrition, but you have some of these other services, or those are going to be part of your growth plan. So talk about how you've been successful, right? You've been bringing in, new clients, money, growing your business. Talk a little bit more about that element, especially as you're going from cash pay to insurance base, kind of that a marketing approach. There's a lot of things tied up in there, right?
Yeah, so let's see. Are you wanting me to kind of talk about how we're going to tie the nutrition into the other elements of the business?
Yeah, and maybe first talk about that whole idea of bringing on these physicians who, helped with the closed panel, but they've, I'm sure, also helped with, bringing in referrals. How did you get and foster those relationships?
Gotcha. So interesting backstory. I actually used to work for the physicians that ended up hiring us as a contract company. So I already had a really good relationship there, and I was very transparent. When I started that I had my own business, I was very transparent when I left that I was leaving because my business had grown. And I have a friend that's a physician there, and she and I were discussing, the possibilities. And I actually told her I did not feel comfortable approaching their board of directors since I had been an employee, and she approached them for me.
Oh, wow.
And so you just never know where doors will open up. And I think it's really important just to stay open to possibilities, because that was not necessarily in our business plan to contract out.
What percentage of your business comes from those kind of relationships versus other referrals? Just kind of curious.
So pre-COVID, we were seeing we were there about 6 hours a week. And that was it. I'll admit I actually have to go back and run some numbers and parse that out. It's something I do need to do. It's on my list, but I haven't. So a pretty small percentage, but we were building. We were getting ready to go to 2 days a week, and then COVID. But we have a ton of just organic traffic, a ton. It's probably 80% of our business is organic.
When you're saying organic, how do you know? Like, where is that coming from? Just people who find your website? Or
yeah, people that find our website. Yep, health profs, they find our website. I do a monthly segment on WJHL. So we rank, I think, a little bit higher just because we're in the media. Insurance panels, that in and of itself, people will get on there and they'll search dietitian or nutritionist. Of course, we pop up. And kind of the other misconception, since we were talking about that earlier, is, and this is one I had, you look at the marketing and you look at health coaches and you think, well, people really don't care that I'm a dietitian. They don't care about my credentials. They just want to know that I can solve their problem. And I will tell you, I have found that to be the opposite. I cannot tell you how many people have called and said, are you a dietitian? What are your credentials? I want to work with someone that knows what they're doing. What's your background? That is what I have found in my practice. So
that's good to hear, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. I'm not sure how to best kind of, ask this, but your practice was kind of, you had cash pay, right? And now you've got this insurance coming in and this hiring of, people to bring on board. Were those all, intertwined? You were already accepting insurance when you brought on, a new person? Like, how are all those bits and pieces connected? Because when I look at, seriously, when I see people are like, I'm thinking about starting, a practice, and then they're like, okay, do I start, I'm just going to do cash flow, and then I'm going to do insurance based, and then maybe hire somebody, and then it's just like there's a million things, right? It's very overwhelming. So I'm just kind of curious to hear the sequence for you, and maybe, what actually happened.
Yeah, so like I said, my husband had probably been hounding me for a good 6 to 12 months prior to my being ready to hear that we needed to consider an insurance-based model. And he's also in the business world, and my business partner. But I actually hired not only one, but 2 dietitians under the cash umbrella.
Okay.
And then about 3 months later, started the credentialing and contracting process. And then I wanted to kind of swing back to your other question about our other services. Right. And that was a deciding factor with the insurance as well. It was supposed to open this year, but because of COVID and the economy, we're pushing it out a year. But the vision is to have more of a holistic healthcare center. So we will be having float tanks, we'll be offering infrared sauna, we'll be offering massage, and all of those are cash based, right? We can't bill insurance. So if I look at it as a funnel, right, insurance is bringing these clients to me. I'm developing these wonderful, beautiful relationships. They're having outcomes. They trust me. And then I have other services to offer. And this is again, my personal feelings. If I was charging them cash for my nutrition services, I would have a lot harder time offering them and upselling them into these other cash-based services. But now, right, insurance is taking care of the nutrition.
Selling to someone they know, like, and trust, right? Yes, you could have a cash pay where you bundle all of that stuff together, but now you already have the relationship. So it's like that total customer value, right? The value of that each client. That's so smart, Amber, of course.
Yeah, so that was another big deciding factor for the insurance.
That it isn't all or nothing. It's not like I'm an insurance-based provider. It's this is one element, and then I also have these other services, because you mentioned at the outset, like, this draining of trying to do client work 40 hours a week, like, that's probably not realistic for a long term. I mean, I think there's very few people who could do that for a long period of time. I wouldn't say that it's not the norm, because it is very draining.
Yeah.
It is very draining.
Very much so.
So I want to go back to a question. We were talking about closed panels. This gap extension that you mentioned, if you could give a little bit exactly what is that, just to make sure that we address that.
Yes. And by the way, I am not the most versed on insurance. I say join Marlene's group if you're in need of more support, because that's where I've learned a lot.
And that's a Facebook group. It's called...
It's a Facebook group.
Insurance, credentialing, and billing for dietitian nutritionists. It's like one of the longest Facebook group names ever, but that is what it's about. And it's pretty much is tons of information in there. So definitely join.
Yeah. I search there constantly. So basically the gap exception is you contact the insurance company and you say, hey, I've got this client or this referral, I'll use eating disorders as an example. They have a diagnosis of anorexia nervosa, they're being discharged. There's no one within a 60-mile radius that specializes in eating disorders. We're requesting the single case agreement or this gap exception for this client, and that can open the door to obtain a contract.
Interesting. I'm curious. I can see that with the physical, like people being in-person visits practice. How do you think the likelihood of these gap exceptions for now that virtual, like so many people could get care virtually? Do you see it as a pro or a con? Just curious.
That's a really great question. And, this is something I said when COVID hit and you and I were talking about, is that the dietitians, we have been up to date with the times for a long time. We've been doing virtual for years. And COVID forced the rest of the medical community to jump forward about 25 years to 2020, which has been wonderful. And I really hope a lot of these things change, especially with Medicare. What I don't think you'll see happen as quickly is the legislation change. And so your legislation still, defines certain parameters and certain requirements on a very in-person. I'm not saying that well, but they look at things as, if someone sits in point A, how far is it to point B versus can they get on the phone or can they do a Skype call? Will that change? I don't know. That'll be really interesting to see, how much insurance companies kind of start pushing back and fighting back with the new virtual access. I don't know.
Yeah, that'll be, kind of to be determined.
Yeah.
So there is a lot, right? So what do you feel is really most important for, dietitians to keep in mind if they're, considering cash pay versus insurance based? Like, is there a checklist they should be going through? Or what are some of you mentioned at the outset, and I think there's some important nuggets there of kind of trusting your own intuition and really looking at maybe your own community, the way you like to work, and that there isn't going to be necessarily, it might look different for you because your situation is different. So I'm just wondering if there's some general things that might apply.
I think, not being afraid to try something different, not being afraid to say, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, not being afraid to pivot. We judge ourselves far more harshly than anyone else does.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, right. It was a little uncomfortable for me to say, hey, I was all about the cash pay and the packages. Oh, guess what? I'm doing insurance, right? But it was the right decision and I made it for the right reasons. And I've been very happy. And very few things are permanent. Yeah. And I think that if we remember that very few things are permanent, that gives us a little bit more permission to kind of explore what would an insurance-based practice look like, or what would a cash-based practice look like.
Because you said some of those fears of insurance is going to tell me how to practice. I hear other things of you're limiting the amount of money you can make because you're taking insurance. Like these are common, if you want to call them pain points that are exposed for people selling any coaches, tools, things around growing a cash-based practice. And I think it's interesting to talk about what your experience is, because those things 100% could be true, right? But in your experience,
sure.
Did you feel like you let go of earning potential or now have less control over your practice? Because those were your own fears that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Were those realized?
Yes. So it takes a lot of personal growth, right? Because you're right. You are going to be capped with your insurance income. You can't just go ask for more money. You can either, create some other kind of unique programs to offer your clients that are cash pay. That's totally doable. You can hire, but again, you've got to let go of that control and be willing. And a lot of people aren't ready to do that. So for me, it's brought a lot of consistency into my business. As far as cash flow, we grow every single month. The pros overall, I have to say, have mostly outweighed the cons, although there's been a few days I wanted to throw the computer through the window, but that's, it's going to happen.
Yeah, like the insurance billing, the reimbursement,
Yeah.
and like claims and
Yeah.
that. So I'm curious what resources you found. You've already mentioned did you take courses on this? Like how, some people are like, okay, I want to learn it all before I get started. Like, or what was your approach?
So I definitely stalked the Facebook group. I use the search feature.
Bless you.
All the
Bless
time.
you for using the search feature.
Yeah, I wanted to specifically mention the search feature. It's a great tool. And then in that group, there's actually a good number of dietitians that have been doing this for quite some time, and a lot of them offer mentoring services and programs. I took Martha McHenry's Smart Billing Boot Camp. It was amazing. We got to ask questions, and that's what I chose to do as far as the billing. I did not end up hiring a billing service.
Okay.
For me, that was too much income to give away. But what I did do was I hired my own admin, and I've taught her how to bill.
Nice, and you have a little bit more control that way.
Yeah.
Because I've heard that you can have good and bad, at least in your case, of investing in an admin,
Yeah.
Interesting. So any other resources besides it was Martha? Can you say that one more time just so for people?
Martha McHenry.
Martha McHenry. Smart.
I think you can find her on, I think her Facebook page is Busy RD, BIZZY RD.
Smart.
Yeah, and Smart Billing Boot Camp.
Okay. So any other recommendations for people that want to learn more about kind of the whole topic of cash pay, to like going through that process, not necessarily, just other thoughts?
I don't know that there's a ton of resources out there. I don't tend to follow a lot of people. I don't follow a lot of blogs. I'm too busy. The Academy does have some good toolkits as far as just kind of walking you through some of the basics. But if you're uncertain, like I said, there's a ton of dietitians out there that are just phenomenal. Reach out, hire them for an hour or two of their time, and
I found
more information.
The MNT provider newsletter that the Academy does. It's actually really good, and there's like
that is a good one.
The Q&A section in there has a ton of good nuggets. Like if you just go back and like read the Q&A, or they have a billing person answer questions, and a lot of times they're questions you've had yourself. So I read 12 episodes. Clearly I've been watching too much Netflix lately. A number of those publications in a row when I was doing insurance billing. So all right. Well, how can people learn more about you, your practice? I know you have a wonderful website, and I highly recommend people go visit it because it's a great example of, I think a brilliantly laid out website. And I'm sure you have some nuggets on, did you DIY that? Did you hire that out?
I am definitely a hire person. Don't spend time doing something that's not in your zone of genius. So my website is healuwellness.com, and that is U as in umbrella. You can also see my other website is thedisobedientdietitian.com. I still have both of those websites, and I still get inquiries from both. Yes. People can hit me up on Facebook, but you can just check out what we're doing over there.
Awesome. Well, for those of you who had some trouble with the video connectivity, I'm sorry, but I kept seeing messages like, it's working for me, it's not. So I always am able to download a video replay. So I thought rather than interrupting the content, we just go ahead and kind of finish up the video, and it will be up on YouTube as it always is. So I'm sorry if you had some trouble. And Amber, I really appreciate your time today. I think a lot of value in kind of trusting yourself, doing what feels right, even though maybe every indicator isn't always there yet. And, that looking at your own community and changing your mind. Like, it's okay. I think you're this perfect example of someone who started a Facebook group and, your pride about, but I was going to be cash pay virtual only. And that you chose a business model that's completely different. And some people would really struggle with, that there's a black mark on me, and that's about growing a business. There's going to be lots of opportunities to pivot, and if you turn your head from opportunities, that's not, that's kind of the way it is, right? So I'm proud of you. I'm excited to see your business continue to grow, because I think we've been connected on social media. What feels in social media time, it's been like since the dinosaurs were around, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. It's wonderful. So for anyone, feel free to drop something in comments. If maybe you didn't make out some of the resources that we mentioned, I'll try to go back through and add links as well. Amber, thank you for your time today. And
thank you.
Again, it's been fun. All right, everyone. I'm going to try to stop this stream, and hopefully everything worked out okay. All right.